In this video, we're going to talk about horizontal shifts. Horizontal shifts are sometimes referred to as phase shifts. And the two functions we're going to be working with in this video are our parent function y equals x squared. This forms my parabola. And then the other parent function, whoops, that should be a smooth curve. The parent function here, it's a reciprocal function, y equals 1 over x. A couple things to think about with this reciprocal function is that it has asymptotes. In fact, it has two asymptotes. There's a vertical asymptote at x equals 0, and there's a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. Now, as I am shifting my reciprocal function around, what we're really moving here are our asymptotes. We might shift it to the right, we might shift it to the left, we might move our horizontal asymptote up or down, but what that's going to do, it's basically going to grab this graph. It's going to grab this graph with these curves and move them. So let's practice this. Let me just delete that business, and we'll get going here. Cool. So with my parabola, I want you to think about the vertex. For my parent function, the vertex is located at the origin 0, 0. For my parent function, if x is 0, my y value is also 0. So when we're looking at this, I want you to think, okay, well, how can I make that become 0? Well, I know that if x is positive 4, I have, if x is positive 4, then my y value is going to be 0. That gives me the location of my vertex. My vertex is located at positive 4, 0. Well, graphing that puts my vertex right there. We've shifted it off of the origin and moved it to the right 4 spaces. From there, I'm going to draw my parabola with the same shape as before. It's a little counterintuitive. If I have, for this function, if I have f of x plus 5, I'm actually moving left. And if I have f of x minus 5, I'm moving right. But what I want you to do is I want you to think, well, how could I make this become 0? How could I get this stuff in the parentheses to equal 0? Well, this equals 0 when x is negative 5. This equals 0 when x is positive 5. That's what forces the shift to the right, and that's what would force this shift to the left. So let's look at our second graph, example 2. I look at this and I think, okay, well, how could I make this 0? How could I find the location of my vertex? Well, this piece here is going to equal 0 when x is negative 2. If x is negative 2, my y value is 0, and that gives me the new location for the vertex, negative 2, 0. From there, I'm going to draw my parabola with exactly the same shape as before. So let's go ahead and practice with our reciprocal function. What we're doing for the reciprocal function again is we're shifting our asymptotes, which is going to force the shift of these curves. We know that when we divide by 0, we get a vertical asymptote. So then the question becomes, how do I make this thing 0? Well, that thing equals 0, the denominator equals 0, when x is positive 3. What that tells me is my new asymptote is going to be right there at positive 3. We're not doing any vertical shifting here. I'm not adding anything to the function, but grouped around this x, we have a shift to the right 3 units. So I'm going to draw in my horizontal asymptote as well. From there, now that I have my asymptotes in place, I can graph this function. And that is my new graph. Let's look at the next one. Same idea. How can I make this piece be 0? That's gonna give me my vertical asymptote. Excuse me. The denominator equals 0 when x is -2. So what that tells me is my asymptote is shifted to the left 2 units. Oops, let me go back. Thank you. My asymptote is shifted to the left 2 units. That's my vertical asymptote. But then I have this piece here. This is a vertical shift. So now my vertical asymptote is shifted to the left 2 units. My horizontal asymptote is shifted up 3 units. Now that I have my asymptotes in place, I can graph my function. Again, these are not pretty graphs. I apologize for the sloppiness of it, but the shifting is the part that we are trying to nail down, and as long as you can see that we are shifting to the left 2 units and up 3 units, I'm super happy. So thank you. That concludes this video.